we have all been through the same experience. I can say that I probably have been through the same experience. Can you tell us about a time when you tried to fake a personality to belong, um, or an exact moment where you realized it was actually draining your power?
Yeah, that's such a deep question. Thank you so much for asking. I think in general, it's very common, as you say, for people to want to change who they are to fit in. It's something I think almost everyone can identify with or can relate to. And I recall when I was young, when I was a child, like a small child, I was obsessed with the thought of being a princess. And I absolutely carried myself like royalty, and I would have my parents buy me all sorts of, these big dresses. And even in kindergarten, I have one memory from kindergarten, and it was when it was freezing cold in Denmark. It was snowing, and I wanted to wear my princess dress. And my dad was like, "No, you have to wear pants because it's too cold. You can't wear this dress." And I threw like a huge fit, and we had to end up making a compromise where I would wear the dress, but then I would wear pants underneath the dress because it was such a big part of my identity to just show up as a princess everywhere I went. I would wear my mom's makeup. I would, find her jewelry and really dress up all the time. And when I started primary school, I would show up again in my princess dress and I would have this little purse with me. And in this little purse, I carried these little perfumes. And I would sit at my desk and I would open this purse and I would put these perfumes out. So I could sit and sniff these wonderful perfumes and kind of just like play with my jewelry and have little nice things around. And nobody understood, like, everyone thought I was crazy, right? Everyone thought, like, who is this super weird kid? And so eventually I was just kind of bullied into being like everyone else. My dad told me one of the most sad days he had when I was a kid was when I came home and I told him, "Dad, I just want jeans and a t-shirt, right? I just want to wear, can you get me some jeans? I don't have any jeans." And it was just seeing how someone who had a very, very strong personality ended up wanting to fit in, wanted to be assimilated, wanted to belong, to have other people not think of me as weird or crazy. And even though I did have a really strong personality and a really deep, actually really deep sense of self at the age of like 6, right? I really knew who I was. And then when I was exposed to a lot of other people, especially people my age, kids my age, who were like, "Why are you being so weird? What is wrong with you?" And that's when I kind of wanted to just fit in and belong. And that's when I changed, right? And I think it's one of the reasons that a lot of people are dealing with a lot of identity issues. They don't know who they are because they've spent such a long time of their very young years trying to fit into somebody else's idea of what is a normal child or who are you supposed to be. And then it keeps coming, right? Because then as we grow up, when we're kids and someone asks, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And you're like, "I want to be the president." Everyone is like, "Yay, good for you." And then at some point in your youth, they start saying, "Oh, but there's only one person who can be president, really. Are you like, don't you want to do something that's more secure? Maybe if you became a doctor instead, maybe you should be an engineer, or maybe you want to be an artist." And your family's like, "That's not going to make you money. You should become an engineer instead. If you could just take a lawyer's degree, then if that doesn't work, then then you always have something to fall back on, right?" So we have even people telling us, who should we want? Not just who should you be, but who should you want to be? And then we start trying to, become an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer or whatever it is, and we have absolutely no passion for it. And then what happens is that we just start trying to do things that aren't aligned with who we are. And we get further and further away from who we were meant to be this whole time anyway. And so I think that's the process, that's kind of what happens. That's one of the reasons that so many people have identity issues. And it's not just teenagers. I work with people who are well up in their, like, older than me also, right? There are people I meet in their 50s and their 60s and their 70s, and they're still thinking, I don't know what I want to spend my life on. I don't want to, I built this life and it's not what I want. And now I can't figure out who I want to be and what I want to do. And so I think what is just really important when you're a young person is trying to gain some sort of confidence in that part of you that, this is actually who I am. This is actually what I want to do. And I'm going to figure it out. And not trying to be too swayed from, and I know this is hard, right? It's so much easier said than done. But trying to not put too much value in external validation, not assuming that just because someone is older than you that they have the answers for what's right for you. And really trying to hold on to a part that feels like this is who I was, this is who I am, this is how I was kind of born into this world. And if you're able to connect with that part of you, even if it's just a little bit, right? Even if it's like journaling at night and you just write, you just remind yourself of who you are, right? If you can do that when you're young, it's easier when you get older because a big problem that we have is that we forget. A lot of us forget who we are. We forget the things that made us unique. I heard someone the other day say, I heard someone the other day say, we're all born unique, but many of us die a copy. And I think it's so sad, right? It's so sad that so many of us, we just try to assimilate. But if there's a part, if you can remember something, a part of you that you know, this is who I was just born to be. This is who I was before I tried to think too much about who I was. This is who I just showed up in the world as. If you can journal on that, if you can connect to that part of you, that's going to help you a lot moving forward. So that was a really long answer to your question, but I hope it was helpful.
It was helpful. And I really loved that you said when you were 6 years old, you felt like a princess, and that was part of your identity. And you knew already what was your identity. It's just that at that age, you weren't so exposed to society, to people's opinions, to people's different perspectives. And now you're a teen, and now you're exposed to all of that. You kind of feel iffy about, that's not the right word, but you feel very uncomfortable with your identity. And we often taught that failing is like the end of the world, but truly it isn't, because I think you get growth with failing because you learn something, you find a different perspective of how you lived or how you did something. So that was, thank you for that. So, on the topic of identity, you have shared that it comes with being confident, but what has actually helped shape your identity, Rebecca?
I think the biggest, most impactful part is relying less on external validation and relying more on validating
Mhm.
myself, but also working on judgment. We are taught to judge each other and we're taught to judge ourselves. And we very often tend to judge a person on their worst day, right? On their worst behavior,
Mm,
on the lowest of their low. So if someone had one negative incident years ago, we will still judge that person on that incident.
mm,
And we learn to not just do that with other people, we learn to do it with ourselves. And when we're constantly learning to judge other people and ourselves based on the most negative that we can find, then we'll end up obsessing about the negatives. And a lot of people, they end up seeing themselves much more negatively than what other people will see them as. And it's really quite interesting. I work a lot with people on their inner voice, right? The inner critic that they're carrying around, the thoughts that they're having that they're saying to themselves. And I very often asked if you were to say those same words, if you were to judge someone else, someone that you love, based on the same behaviors, on the same experiences, if they had, and people will blame themselves for the craziest things, like, oh, I said a wrong word, or I sent a text too early, or I sent it too late, or I did this and I did that. And if other people to do it to us, we will have forgotten about it in a second. But people will
mhm,
literally carry something that they did, small, tiny thing. They will carry it for years. We're thinking about that one time in primary when I said that really embarrassing thing. Nobody can remember, right? Nobody remembers that you said that's what
mm,
happened. But we will judge ourselves so hard. And so a really impactful thing that I did is that I started working on my judgment, not just towards myself, but also towards other people. Because our judgment towards other people is a reflection of our own thoughts, our own beliefs, our
yeah,
own assumptions. And it is much more a reflection of the conversation that's going on in our own heads than it is a conversation that goes outwardly, right? So whenever someone is judging me, I know what they're thinking about themselves. And once I started doing a lot of that work, I just stopped judging people. I just became much more curious about, oh, I wonder why you would think that, right? It comes from a very different
mm.
place other than, oh, wow, I can't believe you would think that or you would say that. And the more I worked on my judgment towards others, I also replaced a lot of the judgment that I had towards myself, and I replaced that with curiosity. And when I could see instead, oh, it's very interesting that you would think this about that other person. What is it saying about you, Rebecca? Like what are
Mm.
you carrying around? And where did that come from? What voice that was planted, right? We all have voices in our heads. One is the third grade teacher who told you that you would never amount to anything, and one is the uncle and the aunties. And we have a lot of voices that aren't actually
Yeah.
inherently ours, but we were trained to think those thoughts because they were planted as we grew up. And so I would put a lot of curiosity into figuring out, where did this come from? Why am I thinking like this? What created that pattern? And especially when it comes to, why do I feel that this is something that makes a human more or less valuable? And I think this is especially for the women in the room. We are very often conditioned
Mm.
to believe that our physical appearance has anything to do with our value in society. Actually, we have an idea that it's a very, very big part of our value to this society. And for many years when I was young, this is one of the biggest struggles that I had as a teenager, was that I didn't look the way that the women did in the magazines that I was exposed to, right?
Mm.
So that was when I grew up, it was magazines, today's social media. And I felt like I didn't look like them. And we didn't have the same awareness that these people are Photoshopped, first of all, right? It's the same on social media. People are using filters and Photoshop and all of this. And we still compare ourselves to these people. And then I would hear all of the conversation about someone. I remember very clearly these magazine covers. I would get into the supermarket and then you stand in a queue, you look at magazine covers while you're waiting. And these tabloids would just be full of women, like celebrities, right? These incredibly beautiful, successful people. And there would be a paparazzi photo taken of them while they were on the beach. And then they would put like a red line, a red circle around, they
Mm.
have a belly, there's a muffin top, here are back rolls, there's cellulite, and they would just be really, really, really negative towards these incredibly successful women. And so what I saw was not their success. What I saw was, if you don't look perfect, you are not good enough. And that was just the message that I internalized. And it really took me decades to work through
Mm.
with it and to find my own personal value in something else than my looks. And I think that's very common. I mean, we see it with men. I experience it as well, right? You have to be this and you have to do that. And when you're a teenager, you really don't have a lot to hang on to, right? There's a limit to what you can have achieved. There's a limit to what you've been able to look like because we're all a little bit awkward until we're fully grown, right? And there's just been so much pressure, I think, not necessarily from society telling teenagers that they have to look and act in a particular type of way, but we're telling humans, this is what makes you valuable. And if you don't have that, you're not valuable. And teenagers they can never, they would never have been able to achieve these things, but they're still comparing themselves to the messages that we hear from society. And so really detangling all of that messaging and then figuring out, is this actually true for me? Am I only valuable when I look in a particular way? Am I only valuable when I have achieved something in particular? And then questioning that. And then again, putting someone that I love on the receiving end of my thoughts, right? Because if you, let's say you take your sister or a good friend, and then you tell her, you're not valuable because you don't look like this, or you haven't achieved all of these things, so I don't see any value in you. We would never say that because it's not true, right? We love that person because they're a wonderful person, because they've done so many other things, like they've been supportive of me when I needed it, or they're a shoulder to cry on. There's so many other things that makes a person valuable in our eyes, but we forget to turn that filter inward. So I often tell people, use someone that you love as a filter for your thoughts. First, direct them towards this person. And anything you wouldn't say to that person, you shouldn't say to yourself, right? So manage your language that you use towards yourself by putting it through somebody that you love first.
That was beautifully said. Thank you for that again. And from what I've gathered, it's very important to view yourself how you would view others, or respect yourself how you'd respect others, or respect others how you'd respect yourself. And that's very important because that also comes with, if you can't respect someone else, that means it shows a lot about who you are, how you view yourself, and how you view the world. itself also. And what I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned men and women, you can be in your career, at school, your grades, family, and society. But outside of that, I think it's very important to understand who you are.
Mm.
And I think a lot of us struggle with that. I think I've also struggled with it. Even now, I still do, because I was a teenager and now I'm a grown woman, I'm an adult, and I'm still figuring out how to be an adult. But I don't think I understood how it was to be a teen before. So it's trying to understand who you are and being able to say who you are is really difficult. So I just wanted to ask you, outside of your career, outside of everyone else, society, who is Rebecca and how would you describe yourself?
That's a really interesting question.
Mm,
Thank you for that. So I spend a lot of time trying to remove the shoulds. Right? As soon as there
mm,
is a part of us that's like, I should be this, I should do that. If I'm not this, people will think that. And I think we really internalize a lot of that conversation. It is incredibly hard to get out of once you have it put in. But I think something that I've allowed myself to be is just be incredibly silly. I'm actually a very silly person. Um, I love singing in the shower, even when I can't hit a note, right? I love singing when I'm cooking, and unfortunately, I have a partner who's just very patient with me, and somehow he just likes it when
Nice.
I sing anyway. I love laughing. I'm also a very introverted person. Whenever I have been out and I love engaging with people, right? I'm a coach. I love talking to people, but it also drains a lot of my energy. And
Mm,
I've been around a lot of extroverted people because, as I said, I'm a very social person. I love being around social
mm.
people. But at some point, my social battery is dead. And that's usually around the same time that other people start warming up theirs, right? And so I had to give myself a lot of permission to just say, okay, my battery's dead. It's time for me to go home and rest. And sometimes I will need
Mm.
to not leave the house for a full 24, 48 hours to recover from that. And it's taken a lot of time for me to really understand that. So I think, yeah, a silly hermit princess is around outside of all of the professional work. But I think also something that is very inherent in me is that I am a coach, and that's not just from profession. When people have
Mm.
something that they want to talk about, I want to talk to them about it. When I can sense that someone has negative language that they use against themselves, or they're perceiving something from a very biased position and it's harming them, I want to talk them through it. I'll have people, my close friends are calling me all the time for support on all sorts of stuff. It's like, oh, I'm having relationship issues, and my partner said this or he did that, and I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know how to stop myself. Like I am that person. And as soon as, I know that we very often use the whole, small talk conversation. And there's not necessarily anything bad in small talk, but I'm very quick to be like, okay, can we talk about how has your childhood impacted? What kind of profession that you've been
Yeah.
pursuing? Do you feel like you love your life? And what is it that excites you about this thing? And I want to get much deeper into conversation with people. And I think being a coach is so inherent in me that even if I hadn't chosen it as a profession, I would still be doing it personally, whether I would call it coaching or not.
Thank you so much. And I hope you stay the person that you are. You do sound like a coach, if I can say that. And not in a strict way, but in an engagement kind of way. How you speak and how you engage, how you've engaged with me in the session, you do sound like a coach. And I hope that everyone in the session has taken something from what Rebecca has said. Also, to just to reflect on the things we've mentioned, to think about your life currently in the present, think about your life in the past, but also, and most importantly, think about the future, but do not stress too much about the future. I think that's also important to note. But it's always great to always remind yourself where you're headed, but don't put too much pressure on it. Rebecca, is there any last few words you'd like to say, especially about identity and finding your identity?
Yeah, it's just really, I mean, if you're a teenager, you're not meant to have it all figured out, right?
Yeah.
when you're in your 20s, you're not meant to have it all figured out. When you're in your 30s, you're not meant to have it all figured out. Life is a journey about figuring it out. It's part of what it is. And we will very quick, because I think also we're putting teenagers in a very awkward position, asking them to
Mm,
choose what do you want to do for the rest of your life by choosing, your academic degree or however, whatever it is that you want to do. We're literally asking very young people who have no idea what they want to do with their lives, what they want to do with the rest of their lives.
mm.
And to that, I just want to say I barely use any of my studies for anything, right? I do have
Yes.
in my bachelor's and in my master's, there are elements that I pull on in my work, especially when it comes to things like cross-cultural communication. But I know a lot of people who studied something and then they ended up changing it. Even my mom, she was a doctor. And she finished her degree and she was fully licensed doctor and she never practiced because she realized during her studies she can't handle the sight of blood. Like, you can't be a doctor
Mm,
if you can't work, like you can't work in a hospital.
mm,
You're gonna have to see blood. And she would just feel sick every single time. And she was like, well, I can't use this. And what she did instead is that she built a marketing, an advertising agency that focused on the pharmaceutical industry. And so she had a deeper knowledge about pharmaceuticals because she was a doctor, but she turned it
mm.
into something completely different. And she ended up being incredibly successful with that. And so it's just to say, don't pressure yourself too hard to figure out what you want to do with your life. Instead, allow yourself to explore, allow yourself to have fun with things, allow yourself to try out different things and then figure out, what do I actually like about this? What do I actually like about that? And it can even be things like volunteering or interning in different places to figure out, do I see myself being in a place like this? And asking questions. If you think you might want to be a doctor, see if you can find a doctor to talk to and ask them, what do you like about it? What were you surprised to find out about it? And there's so many ways to kind of gather information and gather data and gather experiences, but we're often expecting young people to make decisions without having done any of that, without having any idea of what to do. Another thing is you're going to have a lot of pressure from family members, from close friends, from aunties and uncles who are going to tell you who you are or who are going to try to put into your head what you should do and who you should be. And it's really about having a bit of discernment here and figuring out, just asking yourself, do I think that this is actually true for me? Right? You're allowed to have boundaries, even though people are going to make you think that you're not. You're absolutely
Mhm.
allowed to have boundaries. You're allowed to take some time to figure yourself out. And also, you're allowed to change. I am far from the person I was in my teens. I'm far from the person I was in my 20s. I'm far from the person I was even in my early 30s. And so, allowing yourself to continuously grow and find new things that you enjoy and not trying too hard to we very often will think, oh, if I start doing this, people are going to question. They're going to say, this is not who you are. They're going to have opinions, but you have this one beautiful life. Don't allow yourself to be limited by what you think other people will think about you. To be honest, a lot of people don't think about you that much. And that's one thing that I let go of, that
Mm.
it was ruling my life what other people, with even strangers I met on the street, they're gonna think this about me. They're gonna have those opinions. They had no opinions. How often do you fill your head with a million other people that you see throughout the day or throughout the year, right? Oh, this person who saw me once in the street, they will never remember you. So, and there's actually something that's quite a bit of a relief with that, right? Because if you don't have to constantly adjust yourself to what some stranger thinks about you, it means that there's a level of freedom. You can just be who you want to be and try out a couple of different versions of that and figure out what feels at home. Because once we have been created to become somebody else, it's actually really hard to figure out, who am I truly? What is really truly going on here?
Thank you so much, Rebecca. And I think what we can take from that is that don't put yourself in one box. You
Mhm.
can always branch out and find new opportunities, learn more about yourself. All right. Thank you so much, Rebecca. That was lovely. Would you be able to just stay for a bit? We may have questions from participants if possible.
Mhm.
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, I'll stick around.
All right. Thank you so much. Now we move into another critical dimension of life readiness, because once that identity begins to form, you need to start making choices and choices that matter for you. We are pleased to welcome Haliru Ibrahim Gidadawa, and I do apologize if I did not pronounce your name correctly. However, Haliru is a linguist, educator, and youth development advocate, as well as a lecturer in the Department of English, Language, and Linguistics at Sokoto State University, Nigeria. With over a decade of experience in teaching communication, debate, and public speaking, his work focuses on equipping young people with future ready skills in critical thinking, confidence, and effective expression. Haluri, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. Can you hear me? The voice is okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much for the.
All right. Let's.
I have been.
Yes.
I've been
Yes.
listening to Catherine for most of ideas that he was able to share with us today, and they were really fascinating, and they established the foundation upon which I have to share my thoughts today on ideas that have to do with making choices. You know, apart from once a teenager was able to understand his identity, was able to understand his strengths, was able to understand the kind of value that he has. The next step of the teenager is to be able to begin to make choices. And making a choice about one's life is really an important thing, because making right choices means having positive impacts and positive consequences. And making poor choices might lead to negative consequences that also have a negative impact in the life of an individual. So to make choice, to be able to make decisions about life issues, is like doing things on a daily basis. What choices are we making on a daily basis? For example, the choice to go to school, the choice to be with good friends, the choice to read what we enjoy much, the to understand the things around our environment. All this are part of what we do on a daily basis. For example, when I read, most of the time, if I go to school, the lessons that I've been taken in the classes, for example, within the school life situations or environment, is part of our daily. Just like the previous speaker have said, identifying the strengths and aligning to it and making sure you do something that energizes you. Are there things you do without any other person telling you to do that? Are there other things that you do which add value to your life? You also need to ask these questions that what I'm doing, what value does it add to my present and my future? This kind of questions are all part of the narratives that have to do with individuals' choices. So daily choices are what actually accumulates together to form what we call our habits. The choice of saying what is true, using our voice the right way, making sure that we don't succumb to pressure, family, parents, and what people define us to be. That helps a lot in shaping the habits that an individual actually develop on weekly and monthly and yearly basis. It begins from the daily choices we're making by ourselves. And to make these daily choices, we have to make them well informed without having this fear of failure, because sometimes what leads to people to make wrong choices is the fear of failure. You need to make a choice. There are tendencies that you may succeed or you may fail at the end of making such a choice. And sometimes when we fail, the important thing to do is to make a reflection and then make another choice and try again. It's not just about making a decision or a choice, and at the end of the day, you fail and you give it up. And this is why we always talk about two important things that make the human structure. There's what we call the human body, where you have the hands, the eyes, the other parts of the human body. And of course, you have the human soul. The human soul is what guides an individual whenever they want to make a choice. And to be able to make a choice, that's why we have, psychologists that try to say what controls the human soul is what we call the human mindset, set of thinking, set of ideas and ideologies that form the human soul, which actually determines how you govern your body. And they identify the human mindset into three categories. There's what they call the poor mindset, and that's what they call the average mindset, and that's what they call the optimum mindset. The poor mindset is characterized by people who are always occupied by narratives that have to do with talking about people. Whenever you sit down, you are preoccupied by talking about Mr. A, Mr. B, Mr. C. For example, A is richer than B, B is doing better than C. When an individual mindset is occupied by narratives about people, then that person is identified to belong to those with poor mindset. And the people with poor mindset will only end up doing resentment. Somebody do this, I'm supposed to be better than A, B, or C, but they're better than me, something of that nature. So individuals, when making choices, need to understand that the human soul is very important. And to make a good mindset, somebody has to run away from, wasting most of his time making narratives about people. And then we have the average mindset. The average mindset is identified when people are occupied by, discussions about issues. When you sit down, all you talk about is problem here and there. Maybe, for example, we need to do this. The price of food is high. There's no electricity. There's no water. Leaders are bad. When you are occupied, talking about issues, most of the time, then you belong to people that are identified to belong to the average mindset. And talking about, all the time issues would lead to certain lamentations, regrets, and the like. And then the optimal mindset, which, individual or teenagers need to aspire to have, is when people are occupied by, narratives about ideas. There are problems here and there. What do I need to do to solve a particular problem? And that's why some educators say that individuals going to schools should understand this. You need to understand what problem exists or are existing in your immediate environment, that you are now going to school to get the skills to be able to come back to the society to address those problems. And so many individuals go into schools without understanding the problems in their immediate environment that they want to solve with the skills they are going to actually get or obtain from school. And this is about making choice. So the earlier parents understand this important milestone, the better for younger learners, teenagers going to school, that they are going to school with an objective, a motive to acquire certain skills that can help them to be able to come back to their environment to solve a number of problems. And when you come back with the skills that you can use to solve, societal problems, you end up developing a certain premiums that will bring in, returns. And this is why most developed societies actually are far ahead of, developing societies. They try to identify problems existing within the society so that when they go to schools, they are already motivated to have, focused learning, the skills they require to get and obtain in order to come back to the immediate environment to address such problems. Now, these narratives are important for individuals to understand that we need to run away from having, poor mindset, that we shouldn't be occupied by talking about people most of the times. We shouldn't also be occupied by always talking about issues that will only lead to lamentations and regret, but we should be occupied by, ideas on how to solve problems. If I can solve problems that relate to myself, for example, Mr. B can develop skills and ideas to solve his problem. And then it can amount almost all members of the society are occupied in solving one problem or the other. And if a society can solve its problem, the people in that society are working towards addressing problems of that society. And then another society working towards addressing problems of that society. You might end up producing, problemless societies with less problems to handle, and we will have a better world and a better society. So daily choices that we make as individuals go a long way to shape our habits. And our habits will go a long way to shape our character. Because when you tell small lie today to your teacher, the next day the individual tells small lies to some of his friends. They become daily habits. You always need to one small lie to cover one particular problem. And slowly, lying will become a habit to that individual. And once the habits continue to grow with you, you end up developing your character. So what we are saying, to make choices is really an important thing. And it begins on the daily habit of problems that you encounter, and then the choices that you make, as well as removing this fear of failure that you might start today, you may fail, then you go back and make reflection. After making reflection, you should also be able to try again, learning mistakes. So one thing about school life and outside school is that punishments are being offered or being given to learners in school when they make mistakes. But life requires mistakes and certain failures that will help you to teach you for further occurrences and further experiences. That's why they said life is a hard teacher. It gives the test first and then the lesson afterward. But in schools, you get the lessons first and then the test afterward. So what I'm saying is that individuals that want to succeed in life need to understand that making choice is an important avenue in their life. And to make choices, one has to cultivate the habit of making the right daily choices. And I give example, you can make a choice to be with good people, good friends. You can make choice to read all the time to understand the concepts and ideas that you are being engaged in, and to be able to understand problems within your environment. And just like the previous speaker have said, there are issues that are being taught in school, and there are things that life requires. For example, life require, emotional intelligence. It requires your energy where you need to lie that your energy lies. It life requires a lot of things that the school cannot actually afford to teach you. And I always tell some short stories to learners that it will go in line to let them know that emotional intelligence is very important whenever they want to make life choices. There's this short story that we always tell students about a monkey and a shark. Children know that monkeys live on trees and their favorite food is banana, and sharks live in the sea. So there was this monkey that lives on the top of a tree at the edge of the sea. And every time the monkey gets bananas, they'll sit on top of this tree, eat bananas, and if the monkey is satisfied, the remaining bananas will be thrown into the sea. And fortunately, there was a shark that come along the side and eat some of these bananas, and was so much happy that this is delicious that the shark came out of the water to see who is throwing this banana, this delicious thing. And that's how they become friends. So every time monkey go around the bush to get bananas, it get plenty, eats its own, and throw the remaining into the water for the shark. And there's this saying that friendship build trust, and from that they become friends to some extent that they can sometimes spend time, chatting before it's find their own way. One time, the shark came to the monkey and told the monkey that my family is very much happy with what you have been doing to me. And I don't know, is it possible for you to come to my family? Because they want to reward you. And there's this saying in English, this proverb that every betrayal begins from trust. Because there's this trust due to the friendship between the monkey and the shark. The monkey was able to agree, but said, unfortunately, I cannot swim. And the shark was like, well, don't worry, just fix a day, I'll come. You climb down from the tree, you climb back, and I'll be the one to swim deep down into the water to take you to my family. And they will be able to reward you for all the good things you have been doing to me. Because of the trust, the monkey agreed. The day came, the monkey came down, climbed on the back of the shark, and they swim deep down into the sea. At the middle of the water, that was when the shark said to the monkey, "Well, Mr. Monkey, I forgot to say something." He said, "Yes, what is it?" He said, let me tell you this. You know, you're my friend. He said, "Yeah, it is our king that is sick. And the doctor said he will not survive unless he eats the heart of a monkey. And I don't know anywhere to get a monkey, let alone to get the heart of a monkey. And I guarantee you, they will not take anything apart from your heart, just your heart." And at that moment, the monkey was so confused. And this is one of the, teachers about making choices. That sometimes you have to face fear. You have to make decisions, especially when it is during uncertainty. The monkey has to think deep. In terms of size and power, monkey, there's no way to actually shark, in a head-to-head fight, especially inside water. So emotional intelligence is very important when making life choices. The monkey has to think deeply and quickly and said, "Well, you see, there's no problem. The only thing is that had it been told me before coming, it would have been better." He said, "No, I know you wouldn't mind." He said, "No, you don't understand. If you have told me before coming, it would have been better. But let me tell you something. You know you are my friend and there's trust between us." He said, "Yes." He said, "Okay, I'll tell you our little secret. We monkeys always live on top of trees." He said, "Yes." He said, "Do you know why?" He said, "No." He said, "Why we live on top of this is because that's where we always hang our hearts. We don't move around with our hearts in our body." The shark said, "What?" He said, "Yes." And he remained silent. So that's why I said, "You should have trusted me by telling me before coming. I would have carried the heart along and I would have come along with it." So anyway, let us proceed. I will be able to give my fingers, they can fit, do the job of the heart. The shark said, "No, the doctor says the heart." And the monkey says, "And I'm not with my heart." The shark said, "Don't worry. I'm going to swim back. I'm going to take you to the shore. You climb the tree. You bring your heart and you come down and we go back." And the monkey said, "Well, you will get tired. I don't want you to get tired. You're my friend." And the shark has to say, "No, I insist. We must go back." Before even the monkey actually say the next word, the shark has already turned back, swimming up to the shore. And he asks the monkey to get out of the water to climb the tree, bring down your heart, come down, and let's go back. And the monkey has to climb the tree, look down at the shark, and said, "You maroon, I thought you were my friend. I trusted you, only to repay me with this mischief. My heart is in my body, not on the top of the tree." And today that is the end of our friendship. And that's how it goes. Now, one simple lesson from this story that we always tell teenagers is that whatever it is the brain that an individual have that you have to own it. And by owning your brain is to make sure you run away from having a poor mindset, running away from having an average mindset, but to have an optimum mindset, one that always think about ideas, one that always think about solving problems that lie around in your immediate environment. And to be able to do so, you need to have like minds that you can begin to take risks, to be able to, make trials and errors and then try again. And most of the times when individuals want to succeed in life, these are certain things that will not be found in school. Because school is about, system thinking, people or individuals being trained on how to pass examinations, how to get grades, how to follow certain rules and regulations, and there are always rewards and punishment. But in life after school, you have to take risks and you have to, challenge failure head on. You may fail, but it is not failing that refusing to reflect after failing a particular attempt to address a particular problem. So you make a attempt, you try to reflect, and then you try again. And these are some of the things that teenagers always need to rely on. That once you continue to build on your daily habits, daily choices, then they grow to become your habits. Your continuous habit, the kind of habits you're making, will go ahead to actually determine your character. And your character is what builds your destiny. So most of the choices you are making, you ask some questions. One of the questions we make, what value does this choice add to my future? You may realize that maybe what you're doing today doesn't have any value to your future tomorrow. Then you have to decide to make a choice that aligns with your future. Most of these things are what teenagers and individuals in school need to understand that there's always life after school. Second important thing about making choices that is really important is building a very important connectivity, because one of the things that school gives, it gives you scholarship. You get a lot of knowledge. You have access to a number of teachers, either individual teachers in your school or through their works in their books and some other scholarly materials. You also get the opportunity to be in places as a result of school. Laboratories, libraries, museums, places where you make visitations to places and things like that. But another important thing that life gives is the connection. You'll be having the chance to build widen your horizon. And one thing that is very important is that sometimes you have to go extra mile to be so kind, to be so, reaching out to your classmates, to your colleagues. Don't underestimate anybody. The first speaker talked about that important aspect that you need to respect people. And the decisions you are making, you should understand that they don't just affect you, but they affect people around you. And there are so many other things that are very important when individual makes choice. So to summarize some of these things, as I said, that daily choices are important. You don't have to wait until tomorrow to make a choice. You make a choice today. And the daily choices you make today will go a long way to build your habits. So people that are considered to be kind, people that are seen to be good, hardworking, they don't just start today. They start doing these activities on daily basis, reading what appeals them, what help them, trying to do things that are good to them. And this is one thing that we always tell our learners, especially at school, that they need to make people around them happy, beginning with their parents, beginning with their relatives, beginning with their friends. Be that kind of person that always makes other people around you happy. Happy in the sense that what you do is what makes you happy, what makes you important, what makes you valuable. People need to identify their value. For example, at the primary school, what entails there is learners are exposed to literacy and numeracy. Children are expected to learn to read and write and to be able to make, simple divisions, multiplications, additions, and subtraction. But coming to the secondary school stage, what individual learners are expected to do is to read wider, beyond learning to read and write, and beyond learning to do simple arithmetic of additions, subtractions, multiplications, and divisions. That's why you have a number of subject areas to learn. The idea is for individuals to be exposed to a number of disciplines, a number of areas. This is all to help learners make choices, because that's why in most schools where you have the junior secondary school level, all learners are almost learning same subject. But going further to the senior category, the senior level, where you have the senior secondary, that is why you begin to have divisions into sciences, into social or arts disciplines, into technical aspects, and this is where children or individuals are expected to have been guided along before reaching this particular level. But the irony here today is that you find many learners at the senior secondary school level who are only there without making any choice. I happens to be, for example, in a science class at my senior secondary school level. But I realized that that's not where I want to belong. I want to be somewhere where I can actually have the freedom to learn, to be able to impact others with the teachings and whatever. And I realized that sciences is more meant for science oriented, something that has to do with laboratory experiments and things of that nature. And I had to switch. And I remember, just like what she said, sometimes you have a lot of pressure from parents and relatives. And like reaching out to school, why should they allow me change or switch, discipline, moving from science-based classes to, art-based classes? And I was like, well, this is my decision because I want to make this choice because I think I'm good with words and I think I want to impact others, and that's why I want to actually find my place where it has to do with learning, it has to do with course and things of that nature. So making life it shouldn't always be the children themselves making choices, but they should be guided. Parents should be able to understand what their children actually need, what their strengths aligns with. There are so many times when somebody will be forced to be able to do this or that, whereas that's not where the interest lies. For example, the last one I have to say before I rounding up to take questions. We have so many students here at the university who will be sent into courses that they have not chosen. When we ask questions, we realize that that was their parents want to do. You get some students who study medical sciences, for example. They study medicine. There are some that were asked to study pharmacy. And one of the students says anywhere they find themselves within a pharmacy, within a pharmaceutical environment, the smell of chemicals that are used in making medicines give them some bad feelings, real bad feelings. But that's how the parent insists that they must study pharmacy. So we have to reach out to parents sometimes through our guidance and counseling unit to be able to bring them into picture for them to understand that making choice for the future of their children shouldn't be their only decision as parents. The children, the individuals, are entitled to be included in such choice making. For the parent to understand what do they like, what are their strengths. If at all the parents want to align their children to a particular discipline, then they have to start it right at the beginning, making sure they build and support their children, whether they can actually, develop interest in that particular area that the parents want the children to pursue in the future. So, most important things when it comes to making life choices, it should be important to remember that making choices are daily the daily activities we do are the kind of choices we need to focus on. What you do in the morning, what you do in the afternoon, what gives you, some kind of satisfaction, the kind of things you do without somebody asking you to do it on your own, and the kind of things you think people would like to get from you. These are things that should inform your decision when you make choices. And every choice you make has a consequence. Every choice you make has a consequence. That's why it's important to, understand a number of important things before making choices, just like the previous speaker have said. Make a choice that aligns with your interests. Make a choice that aligns with your value. Make a choice that aligns with what gives you some kind of, understanding about life, something that adds value to your future life. This will go a long way to help children to make choices. Because once you make choices, you need to make reflection. The previous speaker talked about certain individuals that have to change, careers after building such careers. And this is part of what we do, making reflections. Even after making choices, we can make reflections to see whether such choices add value to our life in the future or not for us to be able to know what to do to be able to address them. So, in a nutshell, making choice is a huge task that not only the individual should be allowed to do so, and not only the parent have right to make them for the children, but rather should be a dual exercise. Parents should involve the younger ones to be able to arrive at the right decisions for the children to make the right choices and to, motivate their children to be able to understand what, mindset, having an optimal mindset is all about for them to be able to do well to succeed in life. So this is some of the things that I think I have to share. Unless if there are some kind of questions that will trigger some further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Halu. Um, you mentioned the importance of parents guiding their children, and I would also think the importance of teachers guiding the students. However, it's also known that teachers, parents, and society, most importantly, are usually the pressures that stress us or stress the young adults or stress the kids. So, how would you handle that pressure or the tension, for example, between you and your parents? Because currently they're not providing the guidance that you have mentioned, they are the pressure in making your choices. For example, pressuring you with your grades in school or what you should study or what kind of career you need to go into, or just normal daily choices. How do you handle that pressure?
Well, it's really not an easy task handling such a pressure, but there's always a better way to. Once you have a choice to make, which maybe didn't align with what your parents actually require, then you have to do a lot of things to ensure that you can find a safer way to achieve what you intend to achieve. One of the things to do is to have a very good understanding of the choice you are making. That is what we said, daily choices on daily basis. Have a good understanding of the choice that you're making so that you'll be able to convince others to see value in what you are doing. There are so many times when parents understand their children, especially when they get convinced. One of the problems that educators might be missing between the relationship, when it has to do with the relationship between parent and the children, is that parents don't just make decisions about the choice of their children just once or just like that. They must have been informed about some other things and they must have been convinced. Now, what you need to do to run away from that pressure is to guide the children or individuals to be able to do certain things on a daily basis to get a lot of understanding of the choices they want to make. So that now it's about convincing parents, convincing other members of the society of the value of the choices individuals are making. There are so many examples of, this particular scenario. We have a student who got admissions to study something else in the university. But every morning, the child will not come to the university. Will go to a workshop where he's good with mechanical work, doing one thing or the other. And the parents were so angry. We send you to go to the university to study, and you run away to workshops doing handwork and some other things. Would that be this and that? And before you know it, the child understands a lot about what he's doing. Now he wants to make a deal with the parent. You see, you send me to school to study this and that. And to be sincere, I don't have interest in that area. This is my interest. If you really want me to do well, I have identified that the workshop that I attend, there are so many problems that I can solve. If only I have this skill, and that skill. And parents begin to understand, to see reason in what the child is trying to convince them. And they now seek advice from, some counselors at the university. This is the decisions we want to make. We wanted our child to study this, and the child ran away, go to a workshop, is doing this and that. And he's trying to convince us that there are problems he has seen, and these are the skills he wants to get. So it's like the child understood the choice he's making. And he has already seen certain problems that he believed with certain skills he can address. Now the parents have no option but to be convinced. And I guarantee you that child has become an employer of labor today. There are so many people that he employs to do certain jobs with certain skills, modern skills to be able to handle situations. So individuals that want to make choices, want to run away from the pressure of parents, community, and teachers alongside should be able to understand what choice am I making? What value does that choice add to my future, not only my present, for example, my future? Because the decisions we make, the choices we're making, don't just affect us, they affect other people around us. And this is what parents always see, that when they make decisions, they think it's not just about you as an individual, it's about other people around you. And that's what informed parents were making choices. And therefore, the children, the individuals need to understand that when I want to make a choice, I need to understand it very well. And I need to identify what I need to do on a daily basis to be able to have a good understanding of this choice that I'm making that can become part of my habit. But I want to convince other people to see sense into it. And with that, you'll be able to identify certain problems that you can solve. And that is when you now begin to understand the skills that you require. And to sum it up, the whole life that we live in, or the whole life that we enjoy, are or is as a result of the choices that we are making. Whatever life we are enjoying today is the consequences of the choices that we have made in the past. If we become educators, that because maybe we might have made choices to be educators. If we become this or that, of course, there could be certain destinies where your choice is not what your destiny is. But to address this particular problem of pressure from parents, from teachers, and the community, individuals need to have a very good understanding of what choices are they making. Could that be their strengths? Could that be what they value? Could that be something that they do without any other person telling them to do it? If that is the case, it means that is their strength. And then they just need to identify the skills that they can obtain to be able to, channel that energy and the power they possess in solving a number of problems with the skills they are going to obtain. So this is how to go about addressing solving or handling pressure from parents, pressure from family, and pressure from the community.
All right, thank you so much, Hilary. We do have a couple Q&A questions, and since I still have you here, I would like to just read one of the questions for you, Hilary. The question goes, adults always say we are the leaders of tomorrow, but I'm only 13. Is there anything I can do today to change things, or do I have to wait until I'm 18 to be taken seriously?
Excellent. This is what educators consider to be what they call somehow a life problem. Somehow they consider it to be life problem. And when we say life problem, it means it's a problem that every human being should try to address. Every time we talk about the future doesn't start tomorrow. It starts today. So when they say children of tomorrow or children are the future of tomorrow, it doesn't mean you have to wait until tomorrow and then you become the leader of
Mm.
tomorrow. You have to begin by making daily choices right from today to be able to see the direction that you're making, your character. Because you don't take direction unless you make a choice. Don't take a direction before making a choice. Make a choice, then follow your direction. That is the key. And to align it to this idea of I am 13, I don't have to wait to be 18 before I become the future of tomorrow or the leader of the future, for example. There are certain things I need to do even before I'm 13, things that will shape me and my mindset toward achieving certain goals. And that's why we said making these choices. It's not about what do I want to become, but what am I becoming? This is a very important question that educators always try to discuss with individual learners. It's not about what I want to become, but what am I becoming? Because most of the times what I want to become might not be realistic. Somebody wants to become, for example, an engineer, somebody wants to go to space, somebody wants to do this, somebody wants to become that. But are you making daily choices that will become part of your daily habits, that will form your character, that will provide direction for you? This is a very important question. But to make it very much easier and better, you now ask yourself, what am I becoming? If you ask this question, that is when you'll be able to make positive reflections. You might be able to know what you are becoming is not good. Through reflections, you now have to redirect your direction, for example. If, for example, I'm trying to become, maybe I don't go to school, or if I go to school, I skip classes, I don't pay attention to the discussion. I'm not getting any skill that will help me in the future. And still, I dream of becoming a medical doctor, for example, or I dream of becoming a pilot. But these daily choices, daily activities, daily habits are not there. Definitely, the direction I'm taking is a very wrong direction. So, the fact that I am 13 or less and I want to be the future leader, it means there are a lot of things I need to do to be able to arrive at the right destination. Making daily choices, choices that have value, add value to my future, things that will help me grow. Having good friends, having a good mindset, connecting well with people, respecting other people, being kind, and all these kind of things that will support you as an individual. So it is true that at the age of 18, there are so many things you can do. And some of these things you do are what we call the daily choices that you make. And you have to live by the consequences of the choices you are making. And you have to be, able to challenge failure and never to be afraid of failure. That when you fail, you need to rise up, you need to try again, make reflections and try again. Because there's this saying that the whole world in which we live is being governed by certain choices made by people who believe in the choices they are making, who believe they are adding value to the society. So if you don't use your mindset well, you don't use your ideas, the values you have, somebody will end up using his own ideas to colonize your ideas, to make you less valuable in the society, and you begin to make regret. So to summarize it up, at the age of even 9, there are certain things I need to do if I want to be the future leader of tomorrow at the age of 18. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hilary. Thank you. And I hope everyone can reflect on what you've said, especially on just incorporating having daily choices and remembering that that can build your identity as a person. It builds you, it builds your character. And that's very important to remember. Rebecca, are you still there? Hi.
I'm here. Hi.
So we have one Q&A question for you. The question goes, it feels like everyone on social media has life figured out and is doing amazing things. How do I stop feeling like I'm behind?
People on social media shows you the best of days. They show you
Yeah.
what they want you to see. That is maybe a tiny reflection of what their real life is, first of all.
Mm.
It's very few people who have it all figured out. And even the people who do have it figured out have probably spent a very long time figuring it out. And we all have our own journeys, our own, each journey that we have is unfolding. It is a tiny, tiny part of the population who have just things handed to them even at birth. And even the ones like I've met a lot of children in my life that just had parents that were incredibly rich. They have their own things to deal with, right? They have a lot of other
Mm.
stuff to deal with. They might not have issues getting access to money or things, but they have a lot of issues getting access to attention, parents that see them, someone who cares about them, feeling loved. They often end up with issues of addiction, for example, or finding some sort of life somewhere else. So no matter what, we will see someone's life and we think we have it, we know what their life is like based on what they decide to post. But
Mm.
very often it's a tiny, tiny part of their life. And I think it's really important that we just remember that. So when we look at someone and we're like, oh, they're successful and they have a great relationship, people will assume that you have a great relationship, but there's a lot of work that comes into having a great relationship. And most people don't put in the work, they just look like they have it all figured out. And
Mm.
so I think just don't compare yourself to that. And especially as a young person, just it's okay that you have a long journey in front of you. we all start somewhere, and one of the blessings about being early in the race, so to speak, in the marathon, is that you get to test out things, you get to try out things, you get to make a lot of decisions, you get to fail a lot, right? You're allowed to fail a lot and start over. Not that you can't start over later in life, but usually you have a lot more responsibilities. And so when you're a young person, you very often have access to just testing things.
Yeah.
And there's a blessing to that, right? There's a blessing to each stage of our journey. And I think it's just important to just recognize where you are, recognize that whatever you're introduced to is not always the truth, recognize that even the people who talk to you, they might not have the answers. And just learn to trust in yourself, learn to trust in the journey, be happy with just being part of the process wherever you are. And don't take social media as being the truth because it's really not.
All right, thank you. And I have one more question directed to you, Rebecca. And all right. Oh, my parents and teachers have these big expectations for me, and it's kind of stressful. How do I tell them I want to find my own way without making them mad?
So there are several layers to this, I would say. First of all, if people have
Mm,
high expectations of you, it's most likely because you've shown that you're worthy of high expectations, which is great, right? Because you've
mm,
probably shown them that you have grit, that you have determination, that you're
yeah.
smart, that you have a lot of potential. And what sometimes happens is that then the people in your life, they will start pushing that potential so that it can become even more potential and you can achieve even more. And knowing, I think one thing that has helped me a lot is just knowing that it comes from a place of love, even though it doesn't always seem like it. It comes from a place of them wanting you to have the best life possible. But they don't necessarily know what will make your best life, especially because what meant success 20 years ago is not the same thing that will mean success in 20 years. First of all, success will look different, but also the things that create success will be different. If
Mm,
I had told my dad as a child that I wanted to be a YouTuber, he would be looking at me and say, "Well, I don't even know what that means." But today we have so many YouTube millionaires, right? And then that's a sense of success. So there's also the level to it that I don't know your teachers or your caretakers, your parents. So I can't say what they will respond well to and what they will not respond well to. But in general, just being honest with yourself, being honest with them, and asking them questions. It can even be things like, what did you want to be when you grew up? Like, and how is your life now compared to who you wanted to be when you were younger? And would you have made decisions differently if you didn't have people trying to tell you what to do? And just kind of seeing if you can if you can, through questions, get them to reflect on what they're actually doing. And then again, I don't know the people that you're dealing with, but the more bravery that we can put into ourselves and we can express outwardly and saying, this is actually what I want to do, it can be negotiating with them. Let me try this thing out and I'll show to you, I'll demonstrate to you that this can actually be a good life. It can be finding
mm,
examples of people who are doing what you're doing and they're incredibly successful. It can just be allowing them to see your passion. Now, a lot of people, especially young people, they will think that their teachers or their parents or their caretakers or uncles and aunties, that they will be mad about something when they don't necessarily, I mean, they don't know because they've never tried, right? Have you actually
mm,
tried talking to them about it? That's the first thing. Another thing is, can you handle them being mad? Because I think it's more important that you create a life that's for you. And then some people will be mad, but guess what? They'll get over it because they always do, right? So
mm,
it's kind of finding the balance between obviously still wanting to nurture a relationship with these people who obviously love you, and then also wanting to build a life that's yours, and then seeing what can you do in order to create this space that allows you to move in a particular direction while still showing that you're still ambitious, you're still hardworking, you're still putting your potential to use, you're just doing it in a different direction. So anything from just gathering evidence, proof, right? Having conversations, helping them reflect. There are many ways to do it, but I would say at least try something because the one thing that I would say is the only not favorable solution is to create a life that you don't want because someone else told you to have that life.
Right. Thank you, Rebecca. All right. Can we get some last few points from the both of you, please? Just about identity, making the life choices, also what we learn from school and outside of school as students, but as young adults coming from your career or university, the things that you gain from university, your career, and school, but also what you can gain outside from that. We can start with you, Haluri. Just some final points, please.
Okay. If I get your question right, so many times you have people coming out from school, only to find out that the life after school is entirely different from the life in school. In school, you're surrounded by, friends, classmates, teachers, rules and regulations, and a lot of things like that, a lot of stuff like that. And therefore, you don't get missing along the line. When you get missing, there are, rewards and punishments. You do well, rewards are there. You do wrong, punishments are there. But in life, after school, you don't get the chance to have the opportunity of networking with people like before in school. You don't have certain rules and regulations that guide your decisions. You don't have, professors or teachers who will be able to sit with you and tell you do this, don't do this, and then do that. Now, when you are out of school, it's like a fish out of a sea on a bare on the bare bank of the sea, or on the bare shore of the sea. It has to survive on its own. And that survival takes a lot of things. That's what we said, some of the things that life requires. That you require emotional intelligence outside school. You need to be able to study, to study your environment and see where do you fit in. There are so many times when you are in school, you think you can fit anywhere. But when you come out of school, you realize that now the world is narrowing. It's not everywhere you fit in. And presently, one of the factors that many young adults or young teenagers have to face after coming out of the school is that there are so many new jobs that don't even exist presently. So they are not even in the curriculum at school, that you don't even get to learn them at school. That it is now after your graduation that you now face a whole new world. For example, all the adults that are here today, when the cryptocurrency actually appeared or emanated in the world of economics today, world of currency today, people have, very poor understanding of what this cryptocurrency is. We never learned about it before. So you keep on seeing so many things arriving which don't exist before. During the era of most of, the adults today, they didn't have the chance to have this artificial intelligence, AI this, AI that. In those times, these new challenges, new ideas don't exist. And today they are providing jobs. So many things will be there out of school. But unless you are
Yeah.
out of school, you begin to realize that I am not really prepared for this. I'm not ready for this. But you have no opportunity or no chance. You don't have any chance like in the school that, okay, even if I felt I have to take this course, no, you have to find a way to survive. And that's why we call soft skills that even after school, you need to tell yourself that you're always a learner. Because as long as you keep learning, you keep growing. So it's not like once I finish school, I am done with learning. No, you learn on daily basis. You try to find means to survive. And I always give examples of certain situations whereby children graduating from schools will be written out back to their teachers. But once I live entirely different life. For example, I remember during my university days after graduation, there's this pressure from parents to do this job and I have my own choice because I have the belief and the feeling that I have very much keen interest in trying to impact others. with the kind of knowledge sharing that I think I can. And therefore, I choose to be an educator. And there are so many members of the family. So what? And there's this particular elder brother who wanted me to work in the banking sector. He was a manager and he wanted to doing handling computers, transactions, and things like that. That's not my time, and that's not my curiosity area, and that's not my strength pattern. And another one wanted me to work in the security sector, for example, the state security side and do this and that. And I had to run away from that. I had to make decisions to be an educator. But then becoming an educator comes with a lot of things that I didn't expect. But once you join the university, for example, they said you have so number of years to go and get your master's degree. When you are done with the master's degree, immediately they say, okay, now you need to go and get your PhD. Wow. So somebody doesn't have to rest. And then you need to publish. You need to, develop ideas. You need to develop theories. On a daily basis, there are challenges. And I begin to ask myself, wow, nobody told me this when we were in school. Because the thought was that when you are done with school, now you just come out, all you do, read books, you teach, and your requires a lot of things. Again, there's another addition, what you call community service. You need to reach out to societies, to communities, with one another, support with the other in various ways. And that's why we begin to develop, society both at the states and the national level, as well as at the international level. We have Impact Africa debates, and we participated almost twice, one in Tanzania, one in Benin Republic. And what I'm saying now, somebody is engaged in a number of things. That during school, nobody told you will do that. All I learned is that to teach this and that. And once we've done, educator is about making policies, doing this and that. So many will have to live with this reality that there are so many challenges out there. There are so many job opportunities which don't even exist. Maybe some might begin to exist at the year they graduate from the university. So they don't even have the opportunity to get acquainted with them. So these are some of the things that are there outside the school environment, which learners need to be well ready to face the challenges. As I always said, failure can come at any stage in life, but it's not failing that matters. You giving up, that's what is the consequence. But you fail, you reflect, you try again, and you continue.
All right. Thank you so much. Rebecca?
Yes. Could you remind me the question?
Yeah, so just the final points on life at school and outside of school, life in university, outside of university, life being a young adult working and outside of that. Yes.
Yeah. I think when we're in school, we have this idea that the most important thing in our whole lives is getting good grades or whatever happens in school. So that is really forming something. And we're taught that, if you have a bad grade here, it's going to impact your entire future. And that's just not necessarily the case. I think I spent a lot of time stressing about grades that never really had much of an impact in my life, actually.
Mm.
Now, if you already know that you want a really fancy scholarship to go study abroad in an Ivy League school, then yes, grades are going to be very impactful, right?
Mm.
But I think I stressed out over it so much that it became my whole identity for that period of time. And I spent a lot of the years that I could have spent on developing myself in other areas, I just spent on trying to get good grades. And it wasn't even about trying to get good at the subject. Everything that I did was for the grade. And as soon as I had completed a course, I would forget everything about it and move on to the next one. And then I would obsess about how can I get a good grade in this. And I think what I would have liked to do differently is actually figuring out, do I enjoy this subject? How could I learn how to apply this subject? If I were to apply this subject in real life, what would it look like? I think just playing around with it more, being more creative, allowing myself to take some more risks when it came, even when I was like writing my thesis, I was trying to fill the boxes and do everything exactly like we were supposed to do, not for the purpose of creating a good thesis, but for the purpose of getting a good grade. And there's this one time during I think it was during my bachelor studies, I was doing a group project and we didn't really fully understand what the project was supposed to be for. And instead of actually sitting down and thinking, how would we solve this problem in the best way possibly, we just kind of ran around like headless chickens.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting the lowest passing grade that you can get. So you pass, but you only just pass, right? It's the lowest thing you can get without failing. And I had never gotten a grade like that in my whole life. And I stressed out about it for years, right? For years. It had such a big impact on my average. Like nobody has asked to see my exam papers ever, I think. Right? It's like, okay, here's my certificate that says that I have this bachelor's degree or this master's degree, but nobody cared about my grades ever. And thinking about how I spent, I don't know what, 15 years obsessing over grades, and I never actually used it for anything. I could have done things so much differently. And I even spent years after I finished school not reading books at all because I had had enough of school, right? And now I enjoy reading for just the fun of reading, but it took me a really long time. And now that I'm looking back, I was like, imagine if I had found a way to enjoy these subjects. Imagine if I had taken some of the importance away from that one number that we get at the end of it. Imagine if I had built some curiosity. I think I would have maybe liked studying, but I hated the whole experience because I was just obsessing over it so hard. And I was obsessing over something that ended up not being very important. Now, one thing that I did realize upon finishing school is that something that I learned in school that has just been the most impactful thing ever is that I learned how to learn things fast. And that is a really good skill to have. So I think even if you can't find excitement about a subject, just know that the fact that you're learning something and you're using your brain and you're figuring out ways of putting things together in this school environment and you're exposing yourself to a lot of knowledge, that in itself is going to help you build really critical skills. But if you want to build the kind of skills that is going to create a lot of opportunities in life for you, focus on building problem solving skills. Focus on whenever it is that you're doing something, look at what is the actual problem and how do I create a solution for this. And this is especially when you get into your higher level education. This is going to be crucial for you. But even in general in daily life, what I very often tell people is like, especially young people, just look around you and see what are problems around here. What are problems in the community? What are problems in the family, around friends? What are the solutions that are available? What works about those solutions and what does not work about solutions? And then put yourself in the mindset of just learning to identify problems and developing solutions. And if you do that and you actually start implementing solutions, you'll see that that is the most, no matter what happens in the future of the world, that is one of the most important things that you can learn because it also teaches your mind to adapt. It teaches your mind to always be in problem solving mode. And whether you become an entrepreneur or you become an employee, that is a skill that is absolutely invaluable, that is barely taught in schools, but that you can develop that yourself and you can create something for yourself in that. And yeah, make problem solving part of who you are. I think that's going to be really, really impactful for you.
Thank you, Rebecca, and thanks to you, Halu, and to everyone who shared their questions and reflections. What we explored today is not about instant answers. From what I've gathered from the speakers, it's about being aware of yourself and just starting out your awareness. Because clarity isn't something you suddenly discover, but it's something you can gradually build from even before your teen years, even when you're a teenager, being a young adult, you gradually you build your character. So thank you again, Rebecca, and thank you again, Haluru. Now, as we move forward, we want to introduce something designed to help you continue this journey beyond today's conversation, a tool that was created specifically to support reflection, mindset development, and intentional thinking. And to guide us through this next segment, I'd like to welcome Abatan Kuzim Olayiwola. Abatan is an SDG advocate deeply committed to youth development, intentional growth, and empowering young people to critically think about their lives and futures. He will talk through the Early Mindset Lab workbook and how you can use it as a practical tool after this session. Abatan, over to you.
Hello everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here at the Future Ready Team Fireside Chat. My name is Abaton Kojumola, and I'm incredibly passionate about helping our generation navigate the fast-changing world we live in. We often talk about being future ready, but the truth is, being ready for the future starts with the way we think today. So that's exactly why we created the Early Mindset Lab. Charlie launched on the 17th of January 2026. I'm sorry. So we officially launched this project on January 27th, 2026 with one goal in mind. And the goal is to bridge the gap between having potential and having the mental to actually I'll say in a world full of AI expectations, the biggest asset set. So we launched this because we noticed too many talented teams feel stuck or afraid of failure. We wanted to turn that fixed mindset into a growth engine. So now I'm going to discuss what this workbook is all about. So this workbook is a tool. It's not just a textbook, and there are no grades. Think of it as a mental gym. It is packed with interactive exercises that help you identify fixed mindset triggers that hold you back, build resilience so that a no or a failure doesn't stop your momentum, and develop future ready habits like critical thinking and self compassion. So, I'm going to tell us how to use this workbook. Using it is simple, you don't have to rush straight. Pick a chapter. You can go in order or jump to a section that feels relevant to you right now. Like so I said using it is simple. You don't have to rush. You have to like pick a chapter. You can go in order or jump to a section that feels relevant to you right now. Like let me say goal setting. So don't just read it. You've checked the work. That's why we put some lines, some paragraphs of answering whatever we want to.
Okay, apologies for that. I think Abatan has some connectivity issues. All right, so just to sum up the workbook, as we move forward, just to sum up the workbook, which is called the Early Mindset Lab workbook. It's not homework, it's more of a personal clarity tool. It's going to help you reflect more deeply about yourself and what you would want in future, strengthen your self-awareness, build intentional thinking habits, and also develop long-term perspective. And the real value of today's session will happen after this call ends, as you'll be able to sit down with your thoughts and reflect on what it is that you would like. Also, what I think is important is to reflect on your past, reflect on your present, and also think and ponder on your future. So just taking part in the Early Mindset Lab workbook and just going through it will just help you think about these important things. Think about your identity, your values, your morals, what you'd like for the future. We do have the link to the Mindset Lab workbook on our LinkedIn page and also our other social media pages. So if you go on there, you'll be able to access it. And we do encourage everyone just to, sit down and think about their way forward. So as we conclude, because I think we have passed the time, I want us to remember that identity is not a luxury, it is a foundation. And clarity is not something you would just magically find. It is something that you need to intentionally build over time. And your future is not decided in one big moment. I think, as one of our speakers have mentioned, you need to make these daily choices, so little choices. Those will lead up to one big moment, or they will lead up to small moments, which will be a success for you. So you just need to consider that. And through these small, consistent choices, you will build your character, you will find your identity. And as said in the talks earlier on, you will have different identities. However, at some point, you will find yourself and who you are. And it's important to just always remind yourself who you are outside of everything else. To our speakers, thank you for your wisdom and honesty. And to everyone who has also joined in today, thank you for investing in these conversations. And to every student out there, if they listen to this now or later on, I hope you have gained something from this. One more thing to say, your life is not something to rush through, it is something to understand. So take your time, ponder, and think about what it is that you would like. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for being present. All right, thank you, Rebecca and Haluru and the Early Impact Africa team as well.